Welcome to the Heart of Soul podcast, an exploration of who you are, what you are, and why you are, offering new ways to investigate age-old questions at the heart of you. Hi, it's Joseph, and thanks for listening to the Heart of Soul podcast. Today, how an allegedly effeminate depiction of Jesus draws yet another display of Christian contradictions and flawed metaphysics. The importance of understanding religion as pre-psychological, yes, there's more to say about that, and how and why every religion ends up being the opposite of what its founder intended. Thanks for listening, and if you're on YouTube, for watching, and if you want to see that depiction of Jesus aforementioned, you're going to want to watch us on YouTube. Thanks so much for being here. Greetings and welcome forward, everybody. This is 86, I think, something like that. You know, about half the time when I say the number of the episode, when I'm editing afterwards, I realize I got it wrong, but not usually more than one off. It's like an inside joke between me and me to mention the number because there's a 50% chance that's correct, and it really doesn't matter. Hi, Stace.
Hey, Joseph. Nice to see you.
Yeah, likewise. And speaking of things that really don't matter, we're going to start off by talking about the depiction of a recent depiction of Jesus as insinuatingly gay, which has made some news headlines recently and is just, I'll put it in the video. If you're watching the video, you'll be seeing it now already. Because the future me, that's weird, the future me is going to stick it into the video somehow. Hopefully. We don't know that he will, but I just, wait, who said I was going to do that? The current me right now is saying that the future me will do that. So, first of all, you came across this, right, Stace? Didn't you?
I did.
And how did that grab you? Where were you looking that you came up with this wonderful thing?
It was a headline on, I think it was The Guardian, from the good newspaper outlet in Britain.
Yeah.
It's pretty even-handed, so I have that. And so there was, didn't show the picture, but it said controversy over gay Jesus. So I had.
The headline reads, I got it here. It's a effeminate Jesus, and here's a great example of bad journalism, because effeminate is in single quotes, meaning someone said it was effeminate, and you shouldn't put quotes in headlines, right?
Yes.
It's like, that's not really news, that's what somebody said. So single quoted, effeminate Jesus sparks furious backlash. Yes. I don't think we've seen yet the headline, White Jesus sparks furious backlash, because he historically could not have been white or blue-eyed. But the effeminate one, that really rubbed people the wrong way. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the Pope has gotten a ton of kickback when he said he would bless the marriage of same gender or trans people. I think it included trans. And boy, the conservative arm of the Catholic Church is going just apeshit. But his response was really interesting. I'm curious what you say about it. He said, well, I can bless the wedding of a corrupt businessman who exploits people for greed, and no one says a word. But if I bless the wedding of a gay couple, people go crazy. Now, think about that. This is Pope Francis.
Wow. It's kind of impressive.
That wasn't bad. Wasn't bad. It's not exactly corresponding, but it's close. It's close. At any rate.
It invites a beginning of a very deep discussion that would not really be had there, but it's a great headline.
Yeah, exactly. So you're looking at the picture here. We've talked before, so it bears, I can repeat this from earlier podcast, my impression, and we'll talk about where I get that impression and intuitively, but my impression of what Yeshua looked like is much more like Joaquin Phoenix, and not this tall, thin, perfectly with perfect pecs and a slim, tall body, with, of course, a Goyim face.
Yes, he's not Semitic, even with the facial hair. He's not Semitic at all. Pretty Michelangelo, really.
Yeah, and you could see this also. I was looking at it this morning. This could be a trans woman, trans man from a woman too.
And there's it's just a
Depending,
matter of time before there's a trans depiction of Jesus, for sure.
yeah, for sure.
If there isn't
But
already.
it's so right here, there what we have here is the artist. Is a Spanish. I think he was Spanish.
Yeah.
Artist.
Salustiano Garcia.
Uh, was perpetuating the myth of the Goyim Yeshua, who was actually 5'7" or 5'8" and kind of thick in the waist and the butt. If you want an intuitive, like a lot of Jewish boys are,
and how ironic to use a Yiddish term to describe him, since Christianity was born out of Judaism, which is a historical detail not commonly referred to.
Yeah, we of course here always refer to him as Yeshua because that is the Yiddish name, and
because
that is
the sound "ja" did not exist in that language.
That's right. That's right. I've heard when I was growing up, I heard Jesus. The Spanish version. The priest once said, "Let's praise Jesus," because there was a lot of Hispanics in the congregation at that moment.
Yeah, he was a Hispanic immigrant in.
Oh yes, yeah,
obviously.
So of course you got
the Catholic Christians were some of the first cultural appropriators by the current definition, right?
Well, look what happened with all the colonialism that happened from Europe into America. Everything got put. All the darker skin, the Native American Indians, the conquistadors that came in and mated with the native Indian of the Mexican domain, and so the white man the white race has appropriated just about all the iconology of the world, and so this is beyond. If I was tickled by the absurdity of it, but the appropriation projection of the white race onto Yeshua is a classic distortion of, for example, white MAGA nationalism, Christian nationalism in this country. So, in so many ways, that the artist depicts him with the loincloth covering his genitals, but not the legs, which for gay men will oftentimes go right there. It actually puts the eye there in the crotch because he's got exposed legs on either side bare.
His upper legs are showing. It's almost like a bikini bottom kind of thing.
Almost, yeah. And it's just really offensive in so many ways, and the controversy becomes so absurd because they'll take the straight folks will take a completely gentrified white Melba toast version of Jesus, but will not take a gay version of that.
Well, you said offensive to whom? In so many ways.
Offensive to standard dogmatic Christians. Yes.
To specify. Because in identity, there's no such thing as being offended.
No, we don't. we just muse upon, cogitate upon the contemplate the absurdity of these projections.
And that's a rabbit hole. That's something that I think you just revealed as because for you it's so obvious. I think it bears explaining. In identity, being offended is always a form of victimhood. It's a form of playing victim as an adult because it's an attempt to justify a trigger. I'm offended by that. It puts the responsibility for the trigger on the outside, so you don't have to look at why you're offended in the first place. And that's one of the many ways in which this article is so ridiculous, because there's not any curiosity about okay, most of the Christians were at what 2.8. What is it? How many Christians are there? 2.2 2 billion? I forget.
2.2 billion, I think,
Yeah.
at the moment. Yeah.
So yeah, most of them have made Jesus white, and then like how many? This one guy, and some of his followers made him kind of effeminate looking and gay, and they're all offended by that. While there's billions of people who are just fine having made them white. Like, well, what about the Semitic or Arabic people?
Exactly.
And how they feel having one of their people basically resurfaced.
Yeah. Resurface is a great way to put it. So, I actually met a Catholic person in one of my early talks who insisted that Jesus was not a Jew because he was a Christian. And so, and this person had a pretty high-end education, if I remember correctly. He wasn't just, someone who wasn't educated. So the fact that Jesus was a Jew, Yeshua was a Jew, and he's all, again, we go one step a little deeper here. Just, he was a Jew. This is not a Jewish depiction, whether it's gay, inspiring, or white. It's just not. So that just shows at the most superficial and obvious level how far afield the world's religion of Christianity, both a Protestant and Catholic, have veered from the historical truth of Jesus and are not interested in a reformatting. But I love what you said there about the trigger. If you're offended, you're wearing a shoe. The shoe is fitting. You would not be offended unless you already had some judgment in yourself that the trigger is bringing up that you don't want to look at, and then projecting that out as a victim on the trigger. What I love, just in the last 20 years in the movies, you'll hear the phrase oftentimes, "Don't blame me, I'm just the messenger." And that's cool because that implies exactly what we're saying. Don't shoot the messenger. Don't blame the trigger because you already own that emotion, even if it was not, you weren't aware of it until that moment. So like Joseph said, if you're offended by this, you should look at why you're offended, that someone maybe hasn't seen you as you feel inside yourself. And so you've got to get angry at this because it attacks your faith or something. And there's another rabbit hole.
Yeah, and this one idea would radically transform all of the divisiveness and culture wars in our society right now, because the indulgence of triggers and offendedness, which aren't usually even named as triggers, but the indulgence of that it's literally at a worldwide history of consciousness high, where people literally feel they have an entitlement to not be triggered or offended, despite the fact that there is no law. not even close. It's not even a misdemeanor to offend someone. And it literally is it's causing the First Amendment to be threatened in some really serious ways.
Exactly right. I read some years ago that there were more in America students of law in university than there were all the lawyers in the country. That just shows that America is the worst of all. You can, if you offend someone, they'll sue you for their hurt feelings, and those cases are being heard sometimes.
Yeah, that's what's actually going on, and then they find some tangible thing to hook it on, suffering or whatever, or damages, but it's really about hurt feelings that people just can't bear.
Yeah, and but let's look. That's the negative side. I feel like we have to hold the over-attachment side too. If you're happen to this lifetime to be gay, congratulations. Love is love is love is love, or trans, or any other the LGBTQ plus.
And that's brave. I'd congratulate them for that as well.
Absolutely. Identity has none of that kind of judgment about it. But if you over-attach to that and say, finally, I have a Jesus I can relate to, well, that's a slippery slope there. Because if that's the case, then you're not settled in yourself yet, which is fine. Given the society we have, you're embattled every day from some corner, likely. It's better now than it used to be, but it's still you got to fight for your own identity center. That's who can criticize you for over attaching to an idealization of one of three the most popular spiritual teachers on the planet. But be careful if you overindulge on that I finally have an icon that fits me. You're putting on the clothes of this picture instead of for yourself, instead of feeling it from yourself on the inside. Mm-hmm. So you can have negative projection triggers and positive projection triggers, and they both are equally questionable, and people should be curious about why they overattach or underattach to
And then there's a rabbit hole right there related to how people relate to reality, because the way it's seen is like, well, there's an a priori, going all the way back to Descartes, as we've previously discussed. There's an a priori, well, we all create our own reality. So if you can distort it in a way that is good and works for you, that's good. But if you're distorting it in a way that's bad for you, then that's bad. And that's inside a subjectivistic frame that already has made the assumption that either there is no objective reality or we can never really know it, so be creative. And that's, identity would say, is another very slippery slope, an existential level slippery slope.
Oh, we could do a whole podcast on the perception of reality and the parameters projected upon it and its existence, blah, blah, blah. But we've got some juicy other aspects here that we can play off.
We don't have time for that.
Not today. Mm-hmm. So what Joseph and I talk about with this also is that, of course, there's Baha'u'llah and there's Lao Tse and there's other ancient spiritual teachers who have followers and in this world in the present time. But really, Muhammad, Jesus, and Yeshua, really, they represent the religions based on their three teachings, Yeshua's, the Buddha's, and Muhammad's, comprise the lion's share of religious participants in the modern day. And so we thought we might just take off on this picture here. Of course, I have to say that the three things coming out the top of his head there, that's the Trinity, I think. But there's another interesting thing. It's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. And well, there's the Son as a human there. So why would there be a Trinitarian thing up there?
And then there's four things. Like
there's four, yeah.
One of those an expression of him, and that doesn't really.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Usually there's a flame up over his crown chakra, and that's the Holy Spirit in iconography and Catholicism. But at any rate, those three, we'd like to deconstruct those three spiritual teachers, and to do that, we're going to take two roads: a high road, a fairly interesting didactic road, but then also an impressionistic, intuitive road about this. So identity is said many times about all three, but I'd like to just things about them: Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. We'd like to do just a slightly deeper dive on it today, playing off this projection picture right here. And that is, let's start with Judaism, because that's actually the link. Abraham and Judaism is the link between Islam and Christianity that neither Islam and Christianity likes to look at. Really.
And Judaism, Christianity, and Islam are all Abrahamic religions, which is why if you stand in the right place, they look basically exactly the same, or three sides of the same object or something. Yeah,
three facets of the same rhomboid, or not rhomboid, whatever.
I was thinking like a pyramid, but tetrahedron, three-sided?
Or tetrahedron.
That would be four.
No, that's three. Tetrahedron is four. There's four-sided pyramids and there's three-sided pyramids.
That's right. I don't know what you call a three-sided pyramid, but one of those. A
trihedron? Trihedron. I think it's a trihedron. Okay. I remember solid geometry from high school a bit. At any rate, those three religions, there are three children of the same father. And all we've got going on over the centuries is sibling rivalry here. Who's the heir to the Abrahamic influence, right? Because Abraham is really seen in Islam as a very important progenitor or foundation figure, out of which Muhammad's whole unfolding came from in some way or was related to. So, in that sense, for Islam and Christianity and Judaism actually to be all participants in the Crusades is just a family dynamic, like in the meta, that is a metafractal of all families in some way. Who gets to be really right? And then they fight in the Crusades. They fight over dirt, literally. Identity steps in on that particular dido. I think that's a use right of a dido. There's nothing more sacred than anything else in earth. As we say so many times, a dirty rat-infested alley in Calcutta is just as spiritual as the Vatican.
There is not more God in a pointy building than McDonald's.
That's right.
Which is such basic metaphysics, because God is in all places at all at once, in all places and all things. But I go to church on Sundays because there's more there, or what? Yeah. And should I be trying to experience God in the McDonald's then, as well as in the church, or should I really tune in the church more because it's more opportunity to experience the omnipresence? Yeah.
Absolutely. And of course, with the minarets or the
full disclosure, I get $1 every time I suggest that you can find God in a McDonald's from the McDonald's Corporation. I just have to say that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
So I'll be doing that more often.
Well, as long as we're on that topic of the buildings,
yes.
Of course, in Christianity, it's really clear. And we're talking about Christianity and Islam right now, and with the minarets and the mosques also, the towering high ceilings are meant as a metaphysics. It's a granite or into earth reality gravitational field projection of the metaphysics that Abraham actually started with, and that is that we're small, God is big. And the soaring ceiling is all out of human proportion in human constructed religious houses of worship, right? So the whole feeling is that you're small and you have to atone for sins, even though in Islam they don't really stress original sin. They just stress the stiff-necked non-obedience to
pride.
Allah.
Yeah,
right?
It's not
pride,
nearly as well
pride.
Defined as original sin, but
yeah,
I mean, if it were any more defined, it would be very obviously a copy of original sin. So it's,
yes.
they kind of got as close as they could without plagiarizing, basically.
Yeah. Nicely put there. Yeah. So whether you call it original sin or pride, our humanness keeps us from heaven until we atone in one of the two ways. The three ways. We can include Judaism here too. You atone with good works, or you atone with grace, or you atone by obedience. Really, are the three that come under the heading here. But in that sense, all three of these teachers, as we'll get to in our intuitive lens when we look at these three, all of them taught love, caring, service, compassion. And yet all three of them have murderous downline justifications for their dark activities. Now, how any Christian, Jewish person or
Muslim
or Muslim can justify violence when all three of those teachers were as gentle as they could be in one way. Abraham wasn't so much, but boy, the Ten Commandments after Moses, that was it. The justification of killing is all part of all three of religions, justified by their own twisty way of justifying it. Mm-hmm. So right there and then and there, the fact that all three can justify murder in the name of Allah, Yahweh, or God is already such an evidence of how far afield of the teachings of these three amazing beings have come in the modern day. So in that sense, we've referred to this many times in podcasts, but just the dogmas of all three are not only related historically, they're related metaphysically, being so far afield of the original teachings, which are all in doubt anyway about what the real teachings were of all three of them. The Quran is supposed to be quoting Muhammad pretty directly, isn't he?
Supposedly, yeah. It
Yeah,
was channeled over
Joseph.
about 10 years on and off.
Yeah, Joseph is more, and we'll get to the why in a moment. In some ways, is more attuned to. He knows more about Islam than I do, and I tend to know a little bit more about Christianity. And he was raised Jewish, so we've got all three.
I know more about Islam than Judaism for sure, but only because Judaism's metaphysics are almost completely absent unless you go at the really esoteric Talmudic level. It's mostly just tradition and connectedness. Is what.
Yeah. So, in that sense, we take a lot of what supposedly were the original teachings of these three men and take them apart a little bit. So, of course, with Jesus, it's been fairly researched pretty well. The New Testament, which is, I think the last time I read it, went through 16 different translations, Coptic and Latin and Greek and Aramaic, and the present one we've got these days. That's the last I read. There was at least 7 or 8 I used to know, but someone said I read somewhere 16. So. Ever play the phone game?
I mean, just the idea that something could be revised and translated that many times, and then to have the last version be related to as the current last version to be, well, this is the word of God, is so ridiculous. It's like, no, this one. Now it just took lots of translations and telephone game and revisions, but this is the absolute word of God now. It's so illogical. It could only be coming from emotional dystrophy.
Yeah. The one defense I've had of that is that this was a Christian.
Oh wait, don't tell me. God has worked through the people through its magic ways as instruments of God to revise it to its perfection. Right? See, exactly. I'm a better Christian than Christians are. So are you.
In other words. Humans are imperfect, and God's been working through all these translations to get now to our time, the final version that He wants.
Right, but when someone sins and does bad things, that's not God working through people, right? And so why doesn't it? Right. If it can do that, why doesn't God just work through people all the? Oh, because it's a test, right? I forgot.
Yeah, and not to mention the inherent framework and foundation of patriarchy in all three of these religions that exists to this day. Judaism and some of the Reformed will allow a female, a woman rabbi, but not in the traditional core stuff. And of course, no priests can be married, and no women can be a priest in Christianity. I don't think there's a female. Yes, that's right. And I think none of the imams are, there can't be a female imam in Islam.
I doubt it. Yeah.
So all three right off the bat are nakedly patriarchal, anti-woman patriarchal bias. So right there, all based on the fact that all three have the big He-Man in the sky, right? That's the God is a man, it's male. So how any woman can be a marching soldier in any one of these religions is beyond me. Any self-aware woman, I can't believe that women who tend to be a 10%, 15% more innately, intuitively human in a really positive way, how they can still be part of these patriarchal religions could only be coming from their own emotional dystrophy.
Yeah,
so
it's fascinating. I once followed around a couple in a department store. One woman completely covered Muslim couple, and just seeing this completely covered woman, like couldn't see anything. I think even her eyes were covered with something very gauzy, and the man, just dressed pretty normally. And it was just, I just sort of stayed within 20 or 30 feet, just watching, like, how are they interacting? Like, she's wearing a costume that completely covers herself, and he's just dressed normally. Like, it just seems like Halloween, It was just fascinating.
And of course, the whole idea with the hajib there is that because so as not to excite the poor dear men into sexual excitation. So the women have to be covered because men can't handle their sexual attraction to
Which
it,
makes them
to
victims as
women.
adults to their own
Yeah.
whatever biology, emotionality, whatever it is, sex drive.
So the covering legitimates the emotional immaturity of Muslim men.
Thus
This is
holding it in
not,
place. Yeah.
yes, this is not a stretch. And we're all children of God, no matter what your faith is. That's fine. But where's the meta compassion-based discernment at some of these
I'll
things
give
we're
you a
saying?
Christian correlate. I once had a client who was a Mennonite, and I didn't know much about Amish and Mennonites at all. I learned a lot working with them. But Mennonites are just Amish that use some minimal technology. They drive cars, they use cell phones, but they do stop, they control media coming at them. So they don't watch movies. They'll use email, but not the internet, because it's about controlling the information that comes at you, which has some merits to it. But I remember once I was talking with him about how difficult it was, because he only hired plain people. That's Mennonite and Amish. This was in Delaware. And he was dismayed because the pool, he needed to hire a bookkeeper. They made this amazing furniture, and he needed to hire a bookkeeper. And he said, all of the bookkeepers in my community are women, and I don't want to work closely with a woman, because he was running finance and all that. And like, I was like, oh, here's a rabbit hole. So why don't you want to work closely with a woman? And he starts telling me, like, well, and my beliefs are about temptations and all that. And he said at one point, I remember vividly, he said, I don't even go to the beach because I don't want to have the thoughts and feelings that I might have about other women if I see women in bathing suits. And I asked him this question. I said, so in your opinion, does it take more strength to stay away from that stimuli and not go to the beach and then deal with what might come up? Or to stay away from it, does it take more strength to isolate yourself from it? Or would it take more strength to actually expose yourself to it and then have to work out whatever comes up? That was thus deconstructing his entire religion.
Oh, God.
The poor guy. And, I don't even remember what he answered, so he must have sidestepped it. But he did not appreciate the significance of that you're actually keeping yourself in a weakened state by controlling the outer stimuli.
Exactly. What better way to prove to your God that your faith is an oak tree?
Yeah.
So let's go to the beach and with
that's
all
where
that
I went.
temptation, I get it. Yeah,
that's where I went, and I think he's like, I'll think about that, but he couldn't go very far because that would change the whole lifestyle. Then it's like, well, why can't you look at the internet, and why can't you watch a movie, and why can't you, and why can't you, right? And then you'd be responsible for the contents of your unconscious, which was a notion that is only 130 or so years old, and certainly did not exist during the time of Yeshua, Muhammad, and Moses, and Abraham, and all those guys.
Yeah, it's basically Judaism is Mosaic Judaism these days. So, it's just again, you highlight something here, Joseph, that all three religions are based on teachings that were pre-psychological.
Yeah,
and there's never been until Identity a paradigm that engages psychology into its spiritual teaching. There's not one out there. Scientology likes to think it does, but they lose themselves in the alien detritus in their spinal cord. For me,
it's too willful to really be spiritual, because it's so much
it's all based on it's so much control and will. At any rate, that track that all three were pre-psychological, means there's never an overlay analysis of the unconscious projections that are going on in religions. They stay completely projective of a pre-psychological state. Humankind's consciousness has evolved. So all you have to do is just go a few steps, like you just did with your Mennonite there, to expose how naive and emotionally dystrophic believers are, because they're abiding with the religion as absolute truth, which we haven't even talked about yet.
Yeah.
An absolute truth that's at a pre-psychological teaching, which takes into no account, hey, could it be that your childhood and your culture at home has affected what you attach to and what you're repelled by? Do you think that might be the case?
Which is neatly sealed off with, I believe it's the Fifth Amendment, honor thy mother and father. So there's a rule that says you better not look at all at how your parents screwed up. That's on the top 10 list in Judeo-Christianity.
Yeah, that's in the top 3 things that if identity could change something in the world right now, that's one of them. Honor your children, not honor your mother and father. I used this anecdote before. I once asked the nun no, this was a priest actually. No, this was a brother. I went to a Catholic high school, all boys high school. It was written by I forget which order of brothers, with the brown monk stuff, about honor thy father, thy mother. I asked the teacher who was in religion class, what if the father is abusing the daughter?
Whoa, killer question. Wow.
Is the daughter still supposed to be honoring the father? Well, the brother got an astonished look on his face. How dare you bring the word sex or the intimation of sex into anything religious? And he just said, this is not a topic we're going to handle, and I advise you to go to confession this Saturday.
What?
So, what are you going to do? Honor thy father and thy mother justifies mothers and fathers needing children to emotionally validate themselves. It's just so easily deconstructible. And
even in a mainstream psychological paradigm, that idea of honoring thy mother and father would be seen as justifying countertransference from the parents to the children. I mean, exactly. That's not even very esoteric psychology.
No, I was just going to say it's really ABC in psychology, countertransference. That is one of the most destructive kinds of things. Why aren't there parenting classes that teach that countertransference happens when parents need emotional food of support from their children, not just when they're old and feeble, but all along. Our mothers, both the Joseph and I mothers, absolutely fed off mine and Joseph's emotional body, and felt justified in doing so. A classic countertransference. So again, we come back to so many ways we could negatively deconstruct religion in basically all of its forms. Not its intention, but it's in its forms and expressions that don't take into account the actual nature of human consciousness.
I think a lot about how, like, in the evolution of the consciousness for human beings, it's sort of like, the unconscious has been identified and it has been explored in different ways. But I think it's sort of like, I think about what it was like when Kepler and then Galileo, I think it was that order, realized that the sun was not the center of the solar system. Like, the church was really actively oppressing that and repressing that. And it took like at least 50 or 60 years for that sort of to get out. And then it took a while for that to catch on. I hope that that's where we are in relationship to the unconscious, because it's heterogeneously appreciated by our society. Some people are operating with a curiosity about their unconscious to some degree. So you and I and identity a lot, other people a little, but the vast majority, like, 90+% of the world is operating in a completely pre-unconscious, a pre-psychological paradigm. As evidenced by the 5 billion people who are Christians, Muslims, Jews, Hindus, etc. They're literally operating as if the sun is not the center of the solar system. They're operating in a completely different world. The curiosity I have is, given that our unconscious protectors don't want to be discovered, how long is this going to last? Like, how long can that hold out? Because with the sun being the center of the universe, the scientists actually have a vested interest in reality.
Yes.
But the average person doesn't necessarily have that. So is this going to go on for another 1,000 years, or another 100 or 10,000? Is it ever going to be appreciated?
When 5 billion out of 8 billion, the scales are tipped toward the negative here. But I love that. I never put that together in my head, that not acknowledging the unconscious motives that drive conscious intentions is every bit as archaic as thinking the Earth is the center of the solar system, the sun moves around it. So both are pre-psychological, as you said, Joseph, and right there, what's the percentage? It's that would be about 62% of the planet is still stuck in archaic, pre-psychological, pre-scientific orientations, and justify their faith and their belief as the reason they do so.
Yes, which is not just, and that's not passive. It's like it's an active rejection of personal responsibility of the unconscious as proof of their worthiness for God.
Yes, that's proof of their worthiness for God.
Yeah, so it's quite invested upon, and this is why it's so difficult to get a religionist to see anything in their unconscious, because it would tear apart their identity as it's built around the religion. So it's incredibly threatening and disorienting for them.
Well, that's actually a fairly good segue. I've got some more to say, though. Give me a moment,
because I know you have a lot to say, and that just came out of me. I'm glad it was helpful.
No, it was perfect, because almost the same 5.27. I did the math on it this morning just out of curiosity. Just about the same number of people who are in religionism is almost exactly as what identity would say is the population of Terran souls here in this world. Almost 2/3. 5.72, I think, is the number I came out. So we'll come back to that. I just want to dangle that one while we complete a couple of other things here. So the interesting thing here is that identity has a very different picture of what actually Yeshua and the Buddha taught, if we could include Buddhism now, because there's a mainstream religion called Buddhism, and then there's esoteric Buddhism, which is more the Zen kind of track that way. Much like a Zen master is like the priesthood in Catholicism. They go a long way further than the laity, the people they serve. The Buddhist, what's in Buddhism? What's the Buddhist religion called? I always forget. Begins with another consonant than a B.
You're talking about Shintoism, right?
Shintoism,
okay.
Yeah, it's related, Shintoism to Buddhism, but it's more of the way that the common everyday person who doesn't become a Zen master.
Shintoism, it's a belief system, and it includes minor deities, spirits.
Sure.
It's kind of like a Davic form of Buddhism.
Yes.
It's like it's magical and fun, and if you've seen, makes me think of the Miyazaki movie Spirited Away. It's kind of got a Shinto spirit to it. There's lots of little kami, the spirits. I mean, the founder of Aikido, Morihei Ueshiba, had a few enlightenment experiences which caused him to create Aikido, and he was very Shinto, and he talked about listening to the whisperings of the kami, the sort of deities, and so it's very kami, magical.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. And so, I think did we mention this last time, or that was a private conversation? Whenever I watch, I dig watching people who climb mountains. I always see them as compensating. Teenagers compensating. They don't have self-worth. So
I'm on top of the world. I'm the tallest person in the world. And that matters. Why? Get a pair of stilts, buddy.
Yeah, but starting out the trek, for example, and a lot of these well-trod expeditions, you've got the deities that you have to
Yes.
you have to kneel before the flags and burn the incense and ask the permission of Mama Everest to let you climb it. I guess Sir Edmund Hillary, the second or third time he came up, he died. I think. I guess
He must have skipped the prayer that time.
Yeah.
Well, just
So
because you pray is no guarantee. It's
that's
not a
true.
deal.
So here we have a lot of humanistic people who are not religious, who do obeisance to these religious icons that they've got to build their little base camp close to, and have all these blessings, and the Sherpas come, and then you have the Lama come and bless, and you walk up and you kiss the beads and all that stuff. And so this is not what I'm trying to make the play here for, is that it doesn't look good for evolution of consciousness on this planet.
Well, it's so interesting to sort of unpack that, because what people see, and I'm a big fan of Everest shows because I just find the mountain I somehow ominous and intense, and the people who climb it and why very interesting. So
Me too.
They show, like, at base camp there's this little altar, and most people see that as like, oh, the visiting Westerners or wherever they're from are honoring the local customs and participating in the traditions that are associated with the activity that they would be seen as respectful and
Yes.
The right thing to do. And on one level that's true. On another level, they are hedging their bets by completely setting aside what they actually believe, how they actually relate to reality, their actual value systems, which are largely agnostic, atheistic, or very vaguely Judeo-Christian, and participating in a polytheistic thing that on any other day they would think is absurd.
Yeah.
That's what's actually going on a deeper level. But because their life is on the line, they'll take it seriously for 20 minutes before they get on the mountain.
Yeah. What's to lose? Maybe I'm wrong. What's to lose? At any rate,
if you don't believe in the kami and the deities, and you think that praying before you get on the mountain influences your chances, I would say don't climb the mountain. There's already like a 30% chance you're going to die, like just statistically. So if you think you got to pray to a god you don't believe in to survive, I think you should have stayed home.
What's wrong with this picture? Now, again, I need to say this over and over again. Our laughing here is not derisive as much as it is hopelessly
therapeutic. For me today, it's fucking therapeutic. I need to laugh about it today.
It's so sad from Identity's point of view. It's so sad that the non-evolving consciousness of religionists, which comprise a little over 5 billion people, the majority of people on the planet, are so out of sync with the evolution, the leading edge of human consciousness, right? They're all representing the trailing edge. And let's just conclude our outer thing here, that and before we go to the intuitive aspect, is that both Yeshua and the Buddha, Yeshua came, his main teaching, and this is not in their Bible that God supposedly edited, right? He came to say that you don't need any religion. You don't need any religion. You just need an open heart to God.
Yeshua said this.
Yeshua said this.
I thought you said the Buddha. Okay, Yeshua said this.
Yes. No, but Yeshua and the Buddha said similar things. Okay. I'll get to the Buddha.
Because Gautama was rebelling against Hinduism, right? Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. So that Yeshua came out of the Judaic background was exactly his intention pre-incarnation. He wanted to show that the letter of the law is not the way to feel the divineness in all of us. He never claimed to be the Son of God, anyone more than else. Whenever they said, "Are you this Messiah?" he said, "Well, who the hell do you say I am? Watch what you say you are, and then ask yourself why. I'm only bringing a message of love, that you don't need religion." And that's why the Sanhedrin had such a burr in their saddle about him, because he was saying religion is obsolete. That was his teaching, but that was nicely edited out by versions of the Bible that made it after Constantine and Fausta decided it was going to be the religion of the new Holy Roman Empire.
And then, like in any
So
other situation, the people with the power or want power go, boy, people really like this guy. How do we make a religion out of
yeah,
it? How do we organize it
exactly,
and profit from it and all
exactly.
that?
And then the Buddha, as Joseph just mentioned, he came to defang Hinduism, which he saw was full of all sorts of projective, dualistic iconography and attachments. And he came to a revolution against. He taught that the ascetics that were out trying to break Maya in their consciousness, try to get out of the trap of samsara, that they were just as attached to their
Yeah.
isolative ascetic lifestyle as people in samsara. He even said that the ascetics were samsaric, which was exactly the opposite of what the Hindu enlightenment path taught.
Yeah,
Used
this
to
is the
teach that.
principle of when people think of false gods, they think of like idolic worshiping, but
Yeah.
false gods, that's the pre-psychological
Yes.
representation of it. But
Right.
from identity's perspective, a false god is a medication. It's anything you
Yes.
use that prevents you from experiencing all of you, and therefore
Yes.
anything that prevents you from experiencing all of existence, and that includes God, all aspects of
Exactly
it.
right. We would say an identity that Christianity, Islam, and Judaism are childlike kinds of religions. They have a childlike youngness to them. With Buddhism is early teenager. At least they say it's incumbent upon me to enlighten and know God in the heaven is going to touch my seventh chakra and immediately make me enlightened. So they're a little further along in Buddhism. But just like the Yeshua, the Buddha came to deconstruct Hinduism and say, you don't need any of that fufara. Just sit and meditate. And eventually things will happen with some, that's an
So the
oversimplification.
Buddha rebelled against all of the structure and deities and complexity of Hinduism and said you don't need any of that. And then it was turned into that in Buddhism. And
Yes,
then
turned into that.
and then Yeshua said you don't need all of this stuff in Judaism that's distracting you from a direct relationship with God. And then it became that with Christianity. And then Muhammad said you don't need all of this polytheistic tribal stuff that's just causing you guys all to argue anyway. Let's just have one God, and we don't need all of these different idols and disagreements. And then they became that with the rest of
Yes.
the world, and then
Right.
created a religion around that. And then Protestants did the same thing with Christianity in the Protestant Reformation in the 16th century. You can have a direct relationship with God, which is exactly what Yeshua said. And then
Yes.
they became that.
Yes.
I'm seeing a pattern here.
What is the pattern? You see what human consciousness does when younger souls, Terrans are the youngest souls on the planet, comprising about 2/3 of the population. And we're not running down their right to feel and believe anything they need to,
Mm-hmm.
but it's pre-psychological. They resist what their teachers taught, and what we resist persists. And that's why they created religions exactly against what the teachers taught.
Here comes
Uh,
the new boss, same as the old boss. It's
right, and of course
ancient.
Moses downloaded or the lightning on Mount Ararat downloaded the Ten Commandments, burned them with lightning, I guess. And so the Mosaic law came directly from God. That was the first Bible, the tablets there, you could say. And so, but if we go back just a little bit further in history, Judaism was born out of racism in one way. All of the Judaic people didn't have they were nomadic, and in that sense, in the historical narrative, the only way they could survive their nomadic existence, beset by all of these other tribal kinds of cultures that didn't want them and tried to kill them and eradicate them. It was born. That was where we're the pet race of God. The only way they could hold their whole system together is to say we're the chosen people, as if God is a racist that prefers only Jews and all the other tribals are not God, and so
Yeah,
it's
and all
okay
that
to kill them.
in-group, out-group stuff is such an artifact of being in a survival mode. It's just a
Yeah,
form of
sure.
collectivism. If we're going to stick
Exactly.
together, we got to have a common enemy, and we're good and they're bad, and we can all pat ourselves in the back. And when bad things happen, blame the other group. And racism-based slavery is,
Yes.
was one of the most advanced economic innovations
Yes.
there ever was. It's like, well, these people with
Yes.
the big noses or the different pigment in the skin, they're
Right.
worse than us. They can do all the hard work. And boy, does
Yes.
that really boost an economy. That's as
Right.
ancient as time.
Ancient as time. And so the Jewish people, the narrative of the ultimate victim of everyone else. So the only way they could hold together from the inside out was to somehow abide that we're the chosen people and no one else is, and all the traditions come out of that. So
Mm-hmm.
unlike Buddhism, Islam, and Christianity, there isn't one real founder of Judaism. It was a traditional lore that came out of we're the pet race of God, and so Abraham, then Moses, and Isaiah did some other things. They all sort of modified it, but the other three. All three, Muhammad, the Buddha, and Yeshua, all taught exactly what the religions that now represent them shouldn't do, and so it's no more. You can be doing no more absurd in that summary than that in terms of qualifying and quantifying the consciousness of religionists. Bless their young hearts. But as we say so often, an Uzi in the hands of a 5-year-old is just as dangerous or more dangerous than a 30-year-old. So their religions, they've weaponized religion. All three of them, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, have weaponized their religion. Not only are they pre-psychological, they've weaponized it so that they have to wipe out or defend themselves against and kill and justify murder to survive.
Mm-hmm.
So what's wrong with this picture? We're saying everyone is a child of God, but why are we stuck so many thousands of years later with really juvenile and teenagery kinds of orientations of consciousness, of which all three of the big three in the West anyway are comprised? It's sad. It's
Yeah.
sad. So when I just said what Yeshua taught and what Joseph says Muhammad taught, and what we're kind of intuiting what the Buddha taught, there's another element here in our time left I want to address, and that is, where does identity's orientations, where do they come from? How do you know what Yeshua actually taught if it's not in the Bible? You
Mm-hmm.
see, so now that's when New Age came in the 70s, out of the hippy dippy time, of which I am certainly have the roots of me in there somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
No, we don't. No, we're not going to do it the old way. I mean, that's what I created this incarnation. So right at the time, I'm 18, 19. It's all happening.
And by the way,
when
there's another example of it where I see this all the time. New Age spiritualists. I've talked before about how I'm a moderator. I've actually founded my neighborhood next door site, and I don't go on it very often because it's become like Facebook, but you see all the time these New Age spiritualists who are imposing their values and pictures of reality onto other people in quite aggressive ways. I thought
Yeah.
New Age spirituality was a way of getting away from the oppressive, objectivistic Christianity,
Yeah.
Islam, Judaisms, and it's like, hey, believe whatever you want. And guess what? They became the same thing. Now it's like, your thoughts are spells, don't think that, don't say that. Like, what are you talking about? That's your belief, not mine.
If there isn't a greater proof that what binds modern and ancient religionism, even New Age, like you're saying here, Joseph, is pre-psychological dystrophy. That's the common denominator. What else do we need to really say? We say it with heart and pain and sorrow, but it is just fact. They weaponize it all, that this is the truth and that truth isn't. And that's called absolutism. The weapon they use, the ammunition for their weaponization of their religionism, is absolute truth.
Which is incredibly ironic, given that New Age pulls from like dozens of different paradigms which are not compatible, and they pull lots of different pieces and then assert them as absolute truth. When I can't even think of a metaphor. It's like creating from a bunch of broken dishes a mosaic plate and being like, this plate is the essential truth. Like, you put that together from a bunch of broken stuff and now you think it's absolutely true?
There is exactly the proof of what we've been saying all along here, that when people don't investigate why they believe what they believe, and they disconnect from how they were conditioned to feel and be that way, and they have no interest in healing as much as to perpetuate the weaponization of their absolute truth. Mm-hmm. That's emotional immaturity in identity's point of view. Mm-hmm. But again, I want to switch modes here now and talk about something that's out there. I refer to it as the Akashika, which is the record of everything that's happened in the human evolutionary arc, and it's accessible with third eye, and many psychics utilize it to get information when they do reads. And you can self-verify this. Don't take my word for it, but you can learn how to do this. And
it's a public library. It's public.
Yes, it's a public library. Have to get there. And you have to apply for the card, an entry card, or like the best is a platinum visa, of course, to the Akasha.
Yes,
but that means you've got to cultivate your third eye, because you could have two people looking at the same file in the Akashica and interpreting it differently, because there's no, even readers, and I'm a fairly accurate one myself, there's no guarantee that my own unconscious stuff might warp some of it. But over 35 years of doing this, I'm actually accurate about 85% of the time, and the other 15 I'm really wrong. It's 100% wrong. So the point here is that, how do you know what Yeshua said? How do you know what the Buddha taught? How do you know that Muhammad really felt what you just said there, Joseph? Well, you can check the Akashica; it's all there. But there's another way we can talk about it here, and I want to say this because we were in the current Hamas Jewish conflict right now. It reminded me, I was in Israel when what's his name, 96 was assassinated. The Jewish prime minister. Oh, what's his name? I'm having a senior moment. At any rate, in Israel, there is a clinic, literally a clinic for those who come to the Holy Land and start having psychotic kinds of episodes that they were Jesus or the Virgin Mary or Judas, and they have a clinic there already there. They did at that time anyway, where they would treat people who got overwhelmed by the power of the Holy Land. Well, this brings an interesting question. Those three people, despite some humanists who say that Jesus was an invention, a political invention, that he never existed, if we take that Yeshua was a real person, and Muhammad was a real person, and the Buddha was a real person, Siddhartha, then it's likely that they were real people, real souls, and it's likely that they can reincarnate in subsequent lives. This is just simple karma and reincarnation metaphysics. But the question becomes, I did some math today. All three of those teachers, if you check the Akashika, were angel souls, all three of them, Muhammad, the Buddha, and Yeshua. And if you check the Akashika. And so a lot of people who, just beautiful people who really feel close to Yeshua, Jesus, let's say, with Christianity, and their heart just sparkles and is all warmed up by it. So Jesus had to be more God than everyone else. First, Identity would like to say, well, that's reasonable you think that, because they're angel souls, and angel souls are only 10% of 30% of souls on the planet. There's roughly, I did the math today, there's roughly 27 million angels on the planet out of 8 billion. It's not. It's 10% of 30% or something. I did the math. At any rate, that means 27 million angel souls. They were angel souls. So the apostles, most of them weren't angel souls. Some of them were, some of them weren't. But the people that he taught were all terrans, younger souls and other soul species. But an angel soul has a whole other presence to them, especially in the old days when there's pre-psychological frameworks. Instead of seeing why you make someone your guru, which is easily seen in deconstructing your unconscious, why you make another human your guru and over-attach to them, to be inspired by Yeshua and the Muhammad and the Buddha, the Siddhartha, they were angel souls, and that could have put a huge effect on the consciousness of those who were near them. They have a different field dynamic. And so when you don't have the modern day and have all these other explanations from science, this explains why they had such kinds of different otherworldliness to them. Not that they were more God than anyone else, but all three were angel souls.
That's 0.3%, if I got that right. It's a lot of zeros. 0.3% angel souls on the planet. Sounds about right. Less than one.
It's about right.
A third of 1%.
Yes. So in that sense,
that's even less. No, that's way less than a third of 1%. It's
it is less. Yeah. So there's not that many, but compared to the population of the earth, let's say it that way. So the question becomes, like at this clinic in Jerusalem, I think it was Jerusalem. Yeah. What about how many people claim to be I was Yeshua? The twin. Have you heard about the twin flames cult?
Oh, sure. Yeah, there's a TV show about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I almost was able to get through the first episode.
Yeah. We got through flames. 2 or 3. Yeah. But the guy there infers directly that he's Yeshua reincarnate. And so you have a lot of these fringe gurus who claim, even what's his name in Africa back in the day, where the big commune, there were all the people drank Kool-Aid. What was his name?
In Africa? That was in Africa? The Kool-Aid guy?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Oh no, not yeah.
Kool-Aid guy was somewhere in the States, I thought.
No, the guy in Africa who had all the people, they all drank something and they all died. He claimed
David
to be the reincarnation. No. It was Africa. Oh God, I can't think of his name. I should have researched this before. At any rate, the point being here is you've got a lot of people, gurus, who claim to be reincarnations of Jesus. There's someone now that's being claimed as the reincarnation of the Buddha. You don't see much people claiming to be the reincarnation of Muhammad. But I want to just put out why is that? That's
I've never thought about that. Nobody ever claims that.
Nobody. Why isn't anyone claimed to be Muhammad?
Well, they don't have reincarnation in Islam.
That's why. See,
but they don't have it in Christianity either.
No, they don't.
Jesus should be in heaven, just like Muhammad should be in paradise. So why they don't come back? That's funny.
That's right.
Oh no, but there's the second coming. Jesus is going to come back, right?
Yes,
one
but
time.
Not as a human. He comes out of the sky on a flaming chariot.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah, not reincarnated. Okay.
No, not reincarnated. So the point of identity likes to, for those of you who haven't heard in the other 85 podcasts, I just want to make patent here that we use a phraseology that represents a metaphysics. And that is that someone can be in the ray of one of these 3 amazing teachers. In other words, if you have impulses that somehow gravitate you to Yeshua or Muhammad or Siddhartha, that where you feel some sort of kinship with it, there's really a couple of different explanations. One is you could have been there incarnatively and known each of them close up. You could have been in the same lifetime as them. But there's another way. We call it in the ray of, that out of 27 million
check my math again. It is, by the way, angel souls 0.3%, a third of 1%.
Okay, whatever that number turns out to be, if you're an angel soul in this lifetime, you could be in the ray of Yeshua or Muhammad or the Buddha. In the ray of, meaning that you're inspired by, and your soul and their soul might be connected in some intrinsic soulful embrace. In the ray of. Identity would never say, would never claim any any teacher who claims they were definitively the reincarnation of another of a spiritual teacher from the past. Maybe one day that will be true, and maybe it's been true already, but the claim of it itself shows the person needs a whole overhaul of their unconscious. If they claim that there's no effect of their conditioning that would lead them to believe they are Jesus reincarnated or Muhammad or the Buddha, they're just pre-psychological also. So identity would never address the issue as someone is definitely the reincarnation. Might in the ray a certain soul be closer to the center of that ray than others? Sure, possible, but it takes no position, or takes a position of no position of absolutism about reincarnating from one of these as one of these three beings. Is it possible? Certainly it's possible, but there's no way to adjudicate that in any sort of emotionally mature way. I just want to put that out there because a lot of the I've met many men who are in the ray of Yeshua. I met someone just recently, a non-dual teacher, always felt close to Jesus's teaching. So I've met many men who have felt in the ray of Yeshua. So this is a beautiful thing to celebrate, not to exclusivate, right? Mm-hmm. So in that sense, I haven't met anyone who thought they were Siddhartha or were in the ray of Siddhartha. But I have met one person who qualifies as in the ray of Muhammad, and this is a delightful, amazing person. I have met, by contrast, the reincarnation of Krishnamurti. We talked about this in another podcast. So in that sense,
we also both knew a very, very likely candidate for the reincarnation of Jim Morrison.
Oh yeah. I forgot. I forgot.
It was a German individual who identified more as an American than a German, and had many of the qualities of Jim Morrison. A great person to have some drinks with.
Right. Wow. Absolutely.
And had some really obvious shamanistic past lives as well.
Obviously shamanistic. Absolutely.
So the whole idea of Jim Morrison's whole frame of that the spirit of a Native American medicine man jumped into him was his best a way of understanding how, we translate that as you had past lives as a shaman and they came forward. They were triggered by seeing these indigenous people.
Right.
And your own, wounded childhood caused you to feel fractionated as a person. So your protector part brought in some of your past life stuff in order to shore up how wounded you were. There's a great example of how people construct an identity in spirituality based on what happens to them and their limited metaphysical models.
I also had thanks for that. I forgot about the Jim Morrison one. But I also I think I've met a person in the ray of Baha'u'llah, the leader of the Baha'i, the founder of the Baha'i religion. So the point here being is that what distinguishes identity and New Age from the three big religions is reincarnation. Zen Buddhist doesn't believe in reincarnation. Only the Shinto kind of popular version of Buddhism believes in reincarnation. There's nothing to reincarnate,
of course.
Yeah, there's nothing to reincarnate.
Too much permanence.
Right. So in that sense, reincarnation is the dividing line of the fact of evolution. You could say personal evolution is mediated by the reincarnational cycle. It's not about, resisting, transcending samsara. That is the mechanism that drives reincarnation, as the East will teach. What drives the motor of reincarnation is evolution of consciousness. And that's what drives it. we evolve through various and sundry kinds of experiences as different versions of humans to get the whole enchilada, so that we start to make linkages between what binds us together more than what divides us. We have to have a lot of experience to do that. So here we have Terrans are the youngest soul species, and they've had less than 100 lifetimes. Whereas we have an angel soul species here, however few they are in the planet, they've had upwards of 300 to 400 and sometimes close to 500 lifetimes here. So, as we said last time, I think the kids are in charge of the human family. There's no parents, there's no one in charge. The elder souls don't get involved in politics. They don't get involved in absolutism. Older souls are much more oriented to their personal experience of the subtle realms and all that includes. So, if we don't say believe in reincarnation because we say so. Cultivate your third eye and then you'll find out. Everything is about self-verification and identity. No beliefs allowed. A belief is a crutch to help you get from here because you're injured somewhere in your soul. You don't need to believe in the sun because there it is. You only need to believe in something that you can't experience. So that's one step away in our picture of reality. And so we support have the real experience and see if it fits what identity offers. It might be a compelling embrace that we might have. So,
yeah, I was thinking yesterday for some reason, imagining someone wanting to prove to someone, saying to someone, well, the moon is very dusty and there's rocks and craters and mountains and stuff. And they're like, no, it's made of cheese because that's what I believe. And they're like, well, here's a telescope. And if you look through it, you'll be able to see for yourself. And I was imagining them saying, well, I don't want your telescope to, distort my reality. I don't know how that works. I don't know how that, what kind of weird magic might be going on in that, because that's going to change my perception. And that's what identity is sort of course, it only takes a moment to look into a telescope. It takes years to cultivate one's third eye. Not necessarily, but it depends.
You could be born with it. Yeah,
you could be born with it. It could be easily uncovered, or there may be not very much third eye skill to be uncovered. It may have to be developed, but just the curiosity to
the
that's
curiosity.
the key thing. It's like, if we told you could have a direct abiding experience of divinity, and then handed you a telescope to look through, would you look through it? Of course you would. But if we told you that telescope took 5 to 10 years to look through and would cost a little bit of money, a lot of time, a lot of energy, and cause you to wade through a fair amount of pain that's already there that you would then discover, would you still want to look through it?
Yeah.
That's the interesting question to me. It's because if someone had come to me, someone did come to me. In fact, it was you in my late 20s and basically said that. And I was like, yeah, I want to find that out. That's compelling to me. But for the other 99.7% of the population, they're like, yeah, I don't think so. I'm going to stick with my moon is made of cheese thing. And of course, they can do that.
Just like flat earthers, they can, you don't even have to go up in a rocket. Just
like an oil derrick from a beach in San Diego.
Right, exactly. Look, you can't see it, or just the top of it is sticking out. Only the curvature of the Earth would not allow you to see it in its full height. Right. The fact the whole paradigm of the curvature of the Earth was already being considered in the 1700s, even before, when sailing ships would be coming toward their port.
They would see it.
They would see
land would rise in the horizon.
But no, a flat earther, don't disturb my belief system, right? Because I learned this on TikTok or on Instagram, At any rate, what we're saying here, don't believe any of it. Just because we're passionate about our truth doesn't mean we're absolutists. We go steady with our truths. We don't marry our truths. We go steady with them, which means we offer them because they've proven over and over and under hundreds and thousands of tests and thousands of moments to be sober, not not absolute, but sober, meaning let's keep exploring until I get a big, huge contradiction.
And
So that, go ahead.
I was in a place just, I don't know, 3, 4 days ago that was so, I don't even have the words for it. I felt so trapped, so crazy, so invaded by every aspect of life. There seemed like absolutely no hope, no resolution. It just seemed completely impossible. And like I had a meta me that was like, surely there's some way through this, but it was awful. And in about an hour and a half talking to your wife Bree in a session, getting all of that felt, it validated yet again that when deep emotions feel impossible and they can land in another human being who has a sufficiently open heart, things heal.
Yes.
But after 15 or so years of doing this work, I was doubting that yet again. Because I felt worse than I had ever felt. It felt more impossible than ever. And something in me was, surely this level of insanity is irresolvable. I'm either going to go crazy or I'm going to have to kill myself. And it only took about 75 minutes of getting that to land. And now it's not gone, but it's way more impossibly manageable. So, but I just say that it's like, I wasn't clinging to an absolute belief of like, surely Stace's wife Bree will save me from this. I have faith. No, it was, no I'm faith. Fucked. I don't know if I'm ever going to get out of this. I sure hope she can help. Yeah. And that's far more difficult than what in the 5 billion people on the planet operating with faith and doubling down on Jesus will get me through or whatever, or, no, it's lead climbing without a fixed rope. And that's for older souls who don't need safety in a set of rules and a big group of people who all agree with them and all that other mind mediated stuff. So, and then the next time something that big is in my face, and I will doubt it again. Sure. I'm sure I will. And I'm glad, because if I were believing that it would be resolvable, well, then I wouldn't be feeling how bad it was, and then I wouldn't be in the now, and that doesn't make any sense.
The belief would squish that down into the unconscious, right? So curiosity is based in doubt, and identity is based in doubt. We support all doubt and all curiosity, and identity's dharmas will prove this to you over and over if you give it a chance. But not because we say so, but because you discover it again every single segment, just like Joseph described.
And that's what makes it so beautiful and also so damn difficult.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not about finding a security. It's about realizing you no longer need that.
You no longer need securities. Mm-hmm. One last point, and we'll close here. I built the paradigm for more of the leading edge psychological segment of consciousness on the planet, because all the other religionists and the humanists have their institutions, as we said before, have their dharmas, have their institutions, and but the older souls at the leading edge who've been around the block more, just older, not better, they were underserviced. Yeah. So I wanted to bring a spiritual teaching that included the advances in the last 130 years of psychology, but integrated psychology into a larger spiritual perspective. But what Joseph just described, what Bree does with him, is a basic face-to-face in one way. A play out of basic psychological teachings, only differing really deeply, and that changes everything. That unlike psychology, we are emoto soulful beings first, not physical beings, not mental beings, not even energetic beings, and that changes everything. So we just sort of deconstructed the big three with a fourth one in there somewhere.
And you can extrapolate to all the rest on your own time if you like.
Yep.
Or maybe we will. Who knows?
if we've offended you in a certain way, please ask yourself why you feel offended. That means you're holding on to a truth that you're not willing to have doubt about. And I promise we're not married to our truths. We go steady with them. Really, we wouldn't have gotten this far. And Joseph, who is one of the most passionate and intelligent people I've ever met, combination, if he's stuck with it all this time, boy, and he's found it makes hay while the sun shines, that's a good commercial. And that's all I can say.
Did try to stop for a while, and I dead-ended not doing this, which is the subject of a book I really am trying to finish about the 6 or 7 years where I was trying pure Zen and ayahuasca in a post-EBE 1.0 mode, which magically steered me in a divine intervention, steered me back into EBE 2.0, really with very little of my own choices, it seems, operating. I mean, I chose to go along with it, but I certainly didn't mean to. So, but I think my soul did.
Yes, exactly. And that's what we help people do, is let the soul start running the consciousness, not our psychological wound-based protections run the being. And so Joseph evolved all that way, and he learned. And the whole point of growth is dead ending. You've got to experience a dead end. Take everything that you feel to that's dead end till it no longer works for you. We support you in that. And you've got, if it's not identity, there's other spiritual teachings that came out of New Age that will teach similar things, but not the same at all what identity does. So, however you are listening to this, you have our support on your journey, whatever that journey is, and I hope we haven't disenchanted you too much if you're a religionist, but if you're a religionist, you're probably not listening to these or watching these podcasts.
Well, and let me be a little bit challenging because I'm feeling kind of passionate today, I guess. So it seems. Related to what you just said, related to dead ending, if you've been listening to this podcast for a while and it all makes sense to you, and you're not working directly with an EBE facilitator, I challenge you to do that. Because that would be dead-ending the paradigm. You can't do identity without working with someone else. So if all of this makes sense to you, then and the idea of taking something as far as you possibly can to find its limits makes sense to you, then you should work with someone. There's not many people available who could work with you, but let's just trust that there will be enough to serve the interest that there are.
Exactly.
But just wanted to say, like, learning about this and listening to this podcast is going to be only a fraction of a % of what it actually is. And if you find it interesting, cool, that's why we're putting it out there. Maybe you're studying this to do it next life when it's far more evolved. Who knows? When it's 10.0 instead of 2.0. I don't know.
Yes, sure.
And that's okay too.
Always evolving, just like we are. And yet some of the core principles stay the same, but they take out new iterations. They take on new zones of application that we wouldn't have seen before it evolved to that point. So thanks for saying that. I'm right with you. You can be entertained by two guys who are entertainers in one parts of our personalities. We both are. Joseph and I both are. But we're dead serious when it comes to matters of the spirit. And so if we've spoiled your religion for you, it's probably not really in objective reality happened because they wouldn't listen to or look at these podcasts. But
I don't think they would have gotten past the effeminate Jesus conversation.
That's true. Picture. Oh God,
no Christian would have.
Okay.
Anyway. Yeah.
All right, Joseph, thanks so much. This was rich and lovely and foamy and substantive all at the same time.
Like a good cappuccino. Thank you, Stace. Thank you, listeners. Tune in next time. We have no idea what the agenda is at the moment, so come and we'll find out together. Bye for now. Thanks for listening to the Heart of Soul podcast. To learn more about Stace Barron and Identity, please visit identity.org. To learn more about Joseph Shapiro, visit clearandopen.com. Until next time, we wish you well on your journey.